Hey barbecue fans, welcome to a beautiful day on the Frankenboo Ranch. Okay, so today let's talk about knives, knife care, and knife skills. Okay, so what we've got here is I've got the 5 knives that I think every barbecue chef should own. And the reason I say this is because you're gonna run into different times during a cook, or when you're prepping, when you're getting ready to slice something up, or when you get more advanced and you're gonna start cutting your meat, where you're gonna need a specific knife. And these are what I feel are probably the most specific knives that any barbecue chef could need. All right, so what we have here is, I've got my set of hammer stall knives. Now I found these knives about a year ago. I really fell in love with the knife because it's a nice looking knife. It looks nice, it's very well balanced, and it holds a very good edge. It is true German steel. It's an American company, and it's a true German steel foundry as well. So I know I've got a quality knife that's going to hold an edge, and it's going to last me a long time. Now this is a middle of the line priced knife, or knife set all around. It's a great quality knife, so you don't have to go spending thousands of dollars on a good set of knives like a Wusthof or something like that, because high-end knives, the higher end you get on like your Japanese knives, the steel will get brittle because it's so sharp, and if you're cutting into a piece of chicken or a bone-in prime rib or something, you hit it, you have a chance of chipping the blade. So these are the knives that I think everybody should have as far as the backyard barbecue cook, or just, you know, so you can make your cooks and your preps and everything go easier. So the first thing I have here is a utility knife. It's a great knife, just all around use for whatever you'd like to use it for. It's just a good, nice little knife. Next thing I have here is my boning knife. You guys have seen me use this before. This, if I'm gonna debone a piece of chicken, if I'm gonna, you know, do some fine trimming on a piece of meat, I'm gonna use this. Now this is an 8-inch Santoku. I've ordered the chef knife. They've been out of stock for a while, so I've been using it out of my Hammerstall knife set. This is a great knife. It's for chopping your herbs, your spices, chopping up pieces of meat, whatever you'd like. This is a great knife. And the reason they call it a Santoku is because they call it a hollow blade. And you can see these little divots in the blade. Now what that does is when you're chopping up something that's moist or wet, like a tomato or vegetables or something like that, it keeps it from sticking to the blade, which everybody who's used the knife quite a bit knows it can get really irritating when that happens. Next knife I think everybody should own is a scimitar. This knife is an incredible knife. It is great for separating muscle. It's great for cutting steaks. I mean, you can even trim your brisket with this. I'll be showing you guys that later on, how we do that as well. This knife is great just for cutting up a heavy-duty piece of meat, getting in there. It's great balance. It's a big knife, so you've got a lot of control over it. And lastly, our slicer. This is an excellent knife if you're going to be slicing brisket, whether it be in a competition, in your backyard. If you've got a big, huge chunk of prime rib that you cook for the family, you're going to want to be able to get through it, and this is the knife to do it. It's very sharp, and it's big, so it can get through the entire piece of meat, so you're not sawing and missing it and going around. Again, perfect knife, great balance, so you're not dealing with a super heavy end on one side and, weighted off on the other, so you don't have a lot of control. It's a great knife. All right, let's talk about care of knives. Okay, so one thing you don't want to do is put your knives in a dishwasher. And the reason you don't want to put your knives in the dishwasher is because the steel is tempered. And what that'll do is it makes it too hot, and it'll take the temper out of the steel. Once you take the temper out of the steel, then the knife's no longer going to hold an edge. So you want to make sure that you're only hand washing your knives. Do not put them in the dishwasher. And lastly, what we want to make sure we're doing is whenever you're cutting, you want to make sure that the surface that you're cutting on is not as rigid as the knife. So it's got to be softer than the knife that you're cutting on. So I'm sure you've all seen the beautiful granite cutting boards that they sell, that they can sit on your counter and look all pretty. That's probably the worst thing you could ever do to your knife, because what's going on here on your knife is you've got a perfect 22-degree edge. And when you roll this knife down onto something like a granite cutting board, it's bending that edge over. Now, this knife set comes with a steel. Now the steel is not for sharpening a knife, it's just for repositioning the edge. So as you're drawing the knife down the steel, it's standing that edge back up. So if you wind up cutting on a surface that is not ideal for your knife and it gets dull, you can use the steel to bring the edge back. Eventually, though, you're going to have to take it and you're going to have to get it professionally sharpened. Okay? So like I said, these are the basic knives I believe everybody should have. So let's talk about knife skills now. All right, so when we're cutting, let's start with vegetables. When you're cutting vegetables, you don't want to hold these things down so when you're rocking the knife back and forth, you catch your fingertips. You want to hold them so that you're riding against your knuckle. The last thing you want to do is lose a finger when you're trying to chop up some vegetables or some herbs or something like that. Now, another important thing, you guys have heard me say it before, one of the most dangerous things in barbecue is a dull knife. And the reason is if that thing gets stuck on a piece of cartilage or something and you're pushing, it's going to go through eventually, and when it does, that knife is going to have a lot of force that you're putting behind it, and it's just going to go. Prime example, my very first barbecue competition I was at, one of the barbecue cooks was using his boning knife to open his ribs, and he was drawing it towards him. Big mistake. You always want to make sure you're pushing it away from you. But he was opening it towards him. The tip of the blade got caught on the rib, and he pushed, came in and stabbed himself right in the stomach, and they had to helicopter him out of the competition. He wound up not competing. He wound up spending a few days in the hospital. Make sure that you think safety first. You always want to cut away from yourself, and if you're cutting towards yourself, make sure you're going off to the side. Don't ever come right back onto yourself, because the last thing you want is to wind up with a knife in your stomach. Okay, so there you go. These are the basic knives I think every barbecue chef should have. Once you have these knives, you'll be able to do just about everything you need to do surrounding barbecue. If you guys are interested in a great knife set, like I said, I bought this knife set. It's amazing. It's got a smaller slicer. It's got a really nice set of steak knives. These are also detachable, so you can take them to the table and let your guests cut up that beautiful prime rib that you carved up for them. Or if you've got a nice charred rare steak that they want to use, you can use these. You can bring these to the table for them as well. Both of them detach. You've also got a nice cheese knife you can use to make some beautiful cheese plates. You've got a great big meat cleaver. If you need to hack open your chicken for spatchcock chicken, right down the spine, works beautifully. And then we've also got our carving fork and our carving knife, which we'll be using very shortly for Thanksgiving and for Christmas for our prime ribs. Like I said, this is a great knife set, very, very affordably priced, and this is something that's going to be beautiful in your kitchen, and it's going to last you a long, long time. Like anything, if you take care of it, it's going to last you quite a while. So there we have it, knives and knife skills. And as we move along through our more and more advanced sections of cutting meat, I'm going to be teaching you guys more about exactly how to use the knife, what each knife individually is used for, and I'm going to demonstrate it as we do it. So there you have it, knives and knife skills. Okay, until next time, keep your fingers out of the way, cut away from you, and keep on smoking it.